Hi guys, welcome back to today's video. Please excuse me if I sound like I have a cold because I do. Currently kicking my butt right now, but I really wanted to film this video because it is a video that I wish I wish I would have seen before I had a baby. But quick disclaimer, don't watch this video in thinking that it's going to scare you out of having a baby or scare you out of having a vaginal delivery. Everything that I'm going to say is my personal experience, and all births are different. Whether you have vaginal, C-section, whatever, they're all different. So just because this is my experience doesn't mean that it'll be your experience. But I want to be honest and talk about the things that a lot of people don't like to talk about. The questions that I had questions about that I felt like I could only ask my really close girlfriends. And I want to just come out here and I'm always real and raw with you guys, and I'm gonna always continue to be. And so I thought that I get these questions all the time, and I wanted to just address them for the people who maybe don't have anybody in their life to ask these questions to. So before we get into this video, just know that there are going to be some really TMI kind of questions in here. So if you want to go in a room by yourself and watch this video, put some headphones in, then I advise you to do that now. Before we get started, hydration. I got my liquid IV in here because that's one of the only ways I'm gonna be beating this thing. Okay, so I asked you guys these questions on Instagram, and I got way more than I'm gonna be able to do in this video, but I'm gonna try to answer as many as possible. The very first one, getting right into the nitty-gritty, is did you wait the full 6 weeks for activity and stuff? By activity, I'm assuming you mean sex, and the answer is yes. So Craig and I were not able to be intimate at all for an entire 4 months because when I had my surgery, the chances of me going into labor anytime after my surgery were very high, and stuff like sex, nipple stimulation, all of those things can put you into labor. So we had to be really careful. We barely even, the most that we ever did or were allowed to do was just kiss. And so I'd be lying if I said that wasn't extremely hard. We are very grateful that it's 6 weeks postpartum now, but that was a really big struggle. But I also had to wait the 6 weeks postpartum because I tore. I had a second-degree tear, and I don't have any friends who tore, so I wasn't able to ask them their experience with the whole situation down there. But recovery for me with a tear was kind of really hard, which I'll talk about in a second. But there was absolutely no way that I was going to be able to have sex or do anything like that before 6 weeks. And when it got to 6 weeks, I was still kind of am I going to be able to do this? But we did. Is it true that everything down there goes back to normal? Describe what to expect, please. So again, this is different with every single person. I think that it's also really different if you tear versus not tear. So because I tore, I obviously had to have stitches. So the recovery, the healing was a little bit different for me. What they did to me was they actually tied my sutures a little bit too tight. And when I went for my 6-week postpartum visit, I actually had to, this is gonna be really TMI, but we're all girls here, I'm assuming. So they actually had to go in and cauterize or burn some of the skin. That sounds really scary, and it is, but this doesn't happen for everyone. They had to burn some of the skin so that it didn't keep growing over where they sutured. It's kind of hard to explain without me drawing a picture, which I'm not gonna do. But yeah, they had to actually burn a little bit of my skin because they tied it so tight. So basically, yes, the answer is yes, it does go back to normal, but some things can be tighter, some things can be looser, and expect them to be looser because you just had a baby. Especially if you have a weak pelvic floor, expect things to be a lot looser in there. But I will be making a video soon, or if I haven't already, about what I'm doing for my pelvic floor to make sure that I can get everything tightened back up in there, which is going to be especially important for when I have another baby. And just sexual activity, exercising, all those things, it's really important to have a strong pelvic core. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say is expect things to be looser, but not like falling out. If things are falling out, or if you feel way loose, then you might want to talk to your doctor. Does the inability to have sex after birth negatively affect your marriage? Well, because like I just said, we weren't able to have sex for 4 months. I wouldn't say it negatively affected our marriage, but I will say that the enemy loved that we couldn't have sex and really tried to use that against us. But I wouldn't say it like directly affected our marriage. It just made us it made the drive to want to be intimate again deeper and stronger for when we could, if that makes sense. This is my favorite question I think ever. Do people really poop during delivery? So the answer is yes. They actually tell you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but they tell you push like you're trying to poop. I don't know if I did, and that's another question somebody asked. I don't know if I did, and I genuinely never ever want to know, because that was like probably my biggest fear above tearing was like, I don't want to poop during delivery, and I especially don't want to poop and Craig accidentally look. Can you imagine? But yes, you do. And in all honesty though, when you are giving birth, whether you're giving birth with an epidural or vaginally, you don't care what's going on down there. I will say that you either pee or you poop. It's just kind of like you're pushing things out and everything is being forced downward. So it's not like the doctors who are doing this see that all the time. They literally do not care what happened. They just care that your baby gets there safely and that you both are healthy. I heard the doctors shave your coochie for you. Did you shave or care? I think that's different from hospital to hospital, but I've heard that doctors only shave you if you're having a C-section, and they require you to be shaved if you're having a C-section. So then they do it for you if you're not already. But I did not have the time. So I was if you guys have watched any of my videos from when I was pregnant up until when I delivered, I had so much pain all the time from my surgery and just like constant uterine irritability that getting into the shower and like moving that short distance was enough for me, and like I couldn't stand for long periods of time. So trying to do all that in preparation for delivery, I just was like, well, I'm gonna do what I can, and I did up until like a week before I delivered, ironically. But again, you don't care what it looks like, you don't care what's going on, and I'm sure you've probably heard that before, and you're like, yeah, but I'll be the person who cares. Maybe you will, like at first when people first take a look down there, but when you are pushing your baby out, you don't care. People will put their hands up in there, they'll put a freaking light up in there. If sometimes it just really doesn't matter, and all your modesty is like out the door. When you give birth, you get stitches in your vagina. Again, this is only if you tear or if they have to cut you. If you just have a delivery where nothing tears or they don't have to cut you, you do not have to have stitches. How does it feel right after giving birth? Do you feel empty? Are things moving? So how do I feel right after giving birth? The first thing that I can say is I felt empty. It's a very surreal feeling having your baby on the inside of you for 9 months, and then all of a sudden they're here in the world and there's nothing in you anymore. There's nothing moving. There's no belly anymore. It's all squishy. It's just, you do feel really empty, and it's kind of like bittersweet in the moment, but also incredible that your baby's there. And I think that feeling of emptiness continues for like a couple weeks after you deliver. Like you just want to be one again because you're now basically two, if that makes sense. What does it feel like down there? I think immediately after I delivered, they like put mesh underwear on me, put a giant pad because I was bleeding obviously, and I tried to walk to the bathroom, and I don't know how I did that. I really don't know how I got up and started walking around after not sleeping for 3 days and just having a 12-hour delivery. Like, women are superheroes, basically, is what I'm saying. But it felt like down there, like, everything, if I'm gonna be really honest, it kind of felt like everything was just gonna come falling out. But that's to be expected because your cervix just dilates to like the size of a head of a baby. So not abnormal. It's not a great feeling. It doesn't feel good. but it's not horrible either. You're kind of just in this like bliss of, I just had a baby, everything is amazing, even though you might be in some pain or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how to explain exactly how it feels other than extremely sore and extremely swollen. So one thing that nobody told me, and I don't know if this happens with everyone, but it definitely happened with me, it basically felt like when I went to the bathroom, everything was so swollen, it felt like my insides were on my outside. And it was kind of terrifying. Like I went to pee and I went to use the little bottle thing and I looked down and I was like, oh my goodness, like it is so swollen / everything looks like it's coming out. That's terrifying. Is this okay? And my nurse was just like, yeah, you're gonna be swollen for a couple days / couple weeks. It's gonna be fine. It's normal. And I was like, oh, okay. So my suggestion to you is get a boppy and sit on that all the time, because your like butt cheeks go on the boppy part and then your thing sits in the middle, so there's no pressure on it, because sitting down is horrible after you give birth. What helped you decide to have an epidural-free birth? Would you do it again? 100% yes. I don't think I will ever have an epidural. If I can do it with my first baby after going through surgery and everything that I went through, I think I can have an epidural-free birth from here on out, unless something happens to where I need one or whatever. I plan on not having one. But what helped me decide was I talked to a lot of women with positive epidural-free birth experiences. I think before I talked to those people, I never questioned whether or not I was going to have an epidural. I was like, yes, I'm going to, because it's pain and I don't want to experience that pain. But once I had my surgery and once I talked to those people who had a positive experience and who were like, no, your body is made to do this. Obviously there's going to be pain, but the experience of a natural birth is unlike anything else. So just try it, like just go for it. And if you go in with a mindset that you're going to have a natural birth, but have an open mind to needing an epidural if you do need one, then like it's a good scenario, you know? So I went in knowing and wanting to have knowing that I wanted to, and gonna do everything that I can to have a vaginal epidural-free delivery, but I wasn't completely opposed to the idea of an epidural. But during my delivery, there was never ever a point where I was like, I want my epidural. Even the times where I said, I can't do this, I never was like, I can't do this, I need an epidural. It was kind of like, I can't do this, I just need some more strength type of thing. I want to know how the pain was when they had to get the rest of the placenta. So they actually weren't getting the rest of the placenta. I'm sure they like got some of the placenta when they were in there, but the purpose of them reaching inside was not to get the placenta. It was to get the membranes that had separated from the uterus when I had membrane separation. If you don't know what that is, go back to my other videos and that kind of explains it. But they had to do that because if they left any of the membranes in there, it could cause infection or hemorrhaging, and obviously we don't want that, so they had to manually go in there and scoop that out. And it's really hard for me to talk about because I have a lot of, I think I have PTSD from that experience, because they did not warn me that that was going to happen before they did that, and they did not numb me. And I went through my entire labor with no medication, and when I got to that point and they did that after my baby was here and everything was just like, oh my gosh, I did it, and they had to do that, it was kind of like this switch that went off in my head where now anytime, like I had to go to my 6-week postpartum checkup, and I'm being really, really real with you guys right now, so please be kind to me when I'm talking about this stuff because it's very sensitive to me, and I'm being raw and real here. But when they had to go and look and make sure everything was okay, I immediately had flashbacks to that moment, and I definitely freaked out a little bit, had a little bit of a panic attack, but I mean, you can't blame me. It was a pretty scary situation. It was very, very painful, but that pain was kind of similar to when he was coming out, like the Ring of Fire situation, but kind of worse. And I do want to say that that does not happen with every delivery either. I've never ever seen a delivery on YouTube or anything like that where someone has to do that. That's very situational, and I think it was just because of my situation and how I had membrane separation. So please do not let that scare you into not having an epidural-free delivery if that's what you want. How was afterbirth contractions and the placenta birth? Honestly, I had probably 4 afterbirth contractions. They never did the thing where they like knead your belly and like push all that stuff out, because they got all of that out when when they reached up in there. But the afterbirth contractions were just like I would say they were like before active labor contractions. So they were painful, but they weren't like I could talk through them. They were just really uncomfortable and annoying. And I only had a couple. And the placenta birth was fine. Like after everything that I'd went through to get him there, it was just weird because my body just kind of forced it out on its own. I didn't do anything to help it out. And they just kind of like at the end just pulled on it a little bit and it came out, and it was weird feeling. It wasn't painful or anything. Did you use a mirror at any point during labor to watch yourself push? No, I didn't. They never offered me one. What I did instead was I actually put my fingers in there to feel where I was pushing and to feel his head. Because at one point they were like, when you push, we can see his head. Put your fingers in there so that you know where to push. And that was definitely helpful because I couldn't figure out how to push, which I might talk about in a later video. But yeah, I think that was helpful. But if you're offered a mirror and you want to, go for it. Is it weird to have somebody stick their fingers up your parts? No. It's not comfortable. Having your legs wide open for someone to get in there is uncomfortable, but I mean, you're having a baby, so they're gonna have to do that no matter what, and they're gonna see a lot more of you, so not really. If you're talking about them checking you, where they have to go all the way up in there with their fingers and see how dilated you are, that is definitely uncomfortable and a little bit painful, but I mean, it has to be done. When does the bleeding stop? I'm currently 11 days postpartum, and what pads work? My bleeding didn't stop until about 2.5 weeks postpartum, but it like very, very quickly tapered off from heavy bleeding to light period bleeding, and then it kind of just was like off and on. It wasn't a lot or anything like that. But that also differs from person to person. I know some people who bled for weeks and weeks, and I know some people who only bled for a week. Just definitely depends. For the first couple days of heavy bleeding, I used the mesh underwear that they gave me in one of the giant pads. And then once I stopped bleeding so much, I used the pull-up diaper things. I can't remember the brand of them, but they're like nude color, and they have purple too. I really liked those because they were easy. You just put them on. You didn't have to worry about the mesh underwear or anything. You just changed the diaper. So I definitely recommend those for like when you're not bleeding as heavily. So intimacy after birth, is it scary, painful? I kind of already answered this question, but yes and yes. It was very scary and very painful. That's a very intimate, obviously, thing to talk about. So I'm not going to go into details, obviously, but it was definitely painful. Some tears were shed, and it was definitely scary because I wasn't sure how healed I was, even though my doctor cleared me to be able to be intimate. Even after I had the burning thing done, it was just scary because you don't know how things are going to go. And especially for us not having sex for 4 months, it was really scary because we're like, it's been a minute, we got to like refigure this out. Worst part of non-medicated birth? I don't really know. I don't know if there was a worse part. Like, that's kind of a hard question to answer. I think the worst part maybe for me in my experience was having to, the pain that I felt when his head was coming through the birth canal. The pain sometimes stopped me from feeling like I could push fully. But it's also for a couple other circumstances and things that were going on with my body at that time that was like leading to me not being able to push fully. But I think that was the hardest part for me, because since I did feel the pain, the pushing against the pain was hard. Whereas when you have an epidural, you might still feel that pain, but it might be easier to push. I don't know, I've never had an epidural, but yeah, I feel like that was maybe the hardest part, but that it won't stop me from having a epidural free birth in the future. How does your body feel the days after birth? Sore, tired, extremely tired. You kind of feel like you just ran a marathon / got hit by a bus, but also in like the biggest bliss ball situation you've ever been in your life, because you have a new baby. But yeah, just very weak, very tired, and very sore. Does having a son with spina bifida scare you to have more children? Not at all. This situation has not changed our desire to have more children in the future even a little bit. Did you have to get a catheter? No, and my understanding is you only have to get a catheter if you have an epidural. So what's going to happen to that whole area after? No idea what to expect, how to care for it. I'm going to do a whole like postpartum essentials video and exactly how I did that in the couple of days postpartum and the weeks postpartum, because there's not enough postpartum support. There is no really postpartum support. So I want to be a resource to you guys to just give you my experience on the days postpartum and tell you exactly what I did, the things that I used, things that helped, because there needs to be more of that. I really want to naturally give birth, but I'm afraid I'll give into the pain. How did you stay natural? I have a few things. First of all is a playlist of worship music. I have a worship playlist called Baby Day. And I have it linked in the description below. I listen to it still to this day, and I listened to it before I had him. But being in labor and feeling the pain, and then, excuse me, hearing in the background a song about God giving me strength, or how good God is, or anything about God, giving glory to God, if I would stop for a second in the middle of my pain and listen to those words, all that pain was still present, but it made me feel strong enough to push through that moment. So definitely get yourself a playlist. Second of all, I would say maybe invest in a doula. I really enjoyed my doula. I think that she was helpful. I actually ended up having 2 of them, and they were just helpful and reassuring me that what was going on was natural, and was like good, and helping me stay centered, helping me to know certain things to do, like if I was uncomfortable in a certain position, trying a different position, or suggesting different ways of pain management, like rebozo sitting, being on my stomach, walking around, squatting, getting on the toilet, getting in the shower, a bunch of different things, and being able to tell at what point I needed to do what thing. So I would definitely suggest looking into hiring a doula. They're not necessary, but they are super helpful. Also for postpartum, if they are a postpartum doula, that's helpful too. I would say the last thing, huge thing for me in staying natural, was having somebody who is like your biggest support. So whether it's your husband, your mom, just being there with you constantly. And like Craig prayed over me the whole time, reassured me. Every time I told him I couldn't do it, he told me that I could, told me why I could, told me that there was purpose in this pain when I had experienced all the pain before. Like the pain that I was experiencing then was actually like super purposeful. And I think having him there to remind me that my body could do it, and that like in just a few hours or minutes or whatever our son was going to be here, was incredible. And reminding me that my body is strong enough, even if I felt like it wasn't. How different is your vagina post stretching and tearing? It's not different. I'm currently, tomorrow I'll be, 6 or 7 weeks postpartum. I cannot remember, but I would say it's about back to normal. Things are inside are still a little bit looser than before, but that's just because I haven't been doing pelvic floor stuff like I should, which I'm going to be doing. But yeah, everything is back to normal, I would say. Do you think you can mentally prepare yourself for labor, or is it totally different than expected? Yes to both. I think you can mentally prepare yourself in like knowing, reminding yourself why you're doing it naturally, why you chose that way. I will try to leave a link below to a like Hypno Babies type of playlist or track, but it's Christian and it's about scripture and reminding you of God's strength and stuff like that, which I think would have been helpful if I would have done it longer than I did. I only did it like the few days leading up to labor because I thought I had longer, so that might have made a difference. But the answer to, was it different than I expected? Yes, because I didn't know what to expect. I tried to prepare myself by watching different labor videos on YouTube, whether they were epidurals, C-sections, or vaginal unmedicated, because I wanted to see different types of birth experiences and know that like they're all beautiful and they're all positive, and just try to prepare myself to believe in myself, basically, I guess is what I did. Does it hurt to walk and move with stitches? Yes, it really hurts to walk with stitches. I felt like I had to like walk like a penguin for a while, and it definitely hurts to sit down. I think it would hurt whether I got stitches or not, just because again everything's so swollen and sore that it would have hurt to sit and walk no matter what. But I think the stitches made it a little bit harder because I could feel myself sitting on my stitches. I don't want my husband to watch me down there. I feel like he'll never look at me the same. I told Craig that he was not allowed to look down there. Like, by no means, under no circumstances was he allowed to. But in the moment when I was actually in labor and when things got really hard and I was trying to push and I had to push for so long, he did look, and you can see in my birth vlog, he did look several times, and he's never said anything about it. He's never said like it was gross or anything like that. And even if he thought that, whether it was gross or not, he still thought it was beautiful because I was giving birth to our child. So I understand that there are some guys who are like, nope, not looking down there, I'm staying at your head, I'll, cheer you on from up here. And whether you have a partner like that, or one who wants to look, or one who doesn't care, know that like they're not wrong for any of their decisions. Whether I think that sometimes we can feel like our body is gross, maybe, if our husbands or partners don't want to look there when we're giving birth, and that can make us self-conscious. But know that like that's not the case. It's just very traumatizing for guys to watch that. And it's not going to change the way that they see your body afterwards. They're going to want to have sex with you just as much. They're going to love your body just as much. It just might be that it's too much for them to see what actually happened. And like, that's okay. Don't pressure them if they don't want to. Just encourage them to know that like it's beautiful, and when the time comes, maybe they'll want to, because Craig was not sure. At first he was like, nope, never looking down there. And then closer to delivery he was like, I don't know, maybe if I feel like I want to during labor, we'll see. And he did end up doing it, and it was fine. So I think that your husband will not look at you differently. But again, I don't know your husband, I don't know you guys, but from my experience, nothing changes in your marriage if he looks at you while you're giving birth. Can I decide how many people are in the room with me in labor? Does it have to be like 5 nurses and doctors? It's different from hospital to hospital. The reason in my video where there were so many people was because there was an entire team for me, with like me laboring and delivering him, and then there was entire pediatrics and then an entire NICU team. So all those people had to be there because he had to be transported to the NICU, and peds had to come and evaluate him to see if his closure was good and like look at some other things. So there were so many people in the room for my delivery for that reason. I've seen deliveries where it's just the doctor, a nurse, and the partner in the room. I think it depends on the hospital, and if it's a teaching hospital, you can still say like, I don't want anybody in the room, but if you don't say that, then they're probably going to bring students in. So I don't know. You'll have to ask your hospital and your OB what they do there. I will say though, when you're in labor and you are focusing on that, you don't care how many people are in the room. You really, really don't care. Did you feel it when you tore? No, because everything was just, they call it the ring of fire, where like the head's coming out. I felt just pain, just like searing pain. So I didn't feel when I tore, and I actually asked in my birth vlog, I said, did I tear? And they were like, we're not sure, we'll have to check. So kind of yes and no. I felt tearing, but I wasn't sure if it was just the ring of fire or if I was actually tearing, if that makes sense. Do you ever feel like you miss life before baby? That's a very hard question, and I don't think that people talk about this either. Kind of yes and no. I don't miss life without him. I would not change anything about my life now. I would not change anything about having him at all. I think that if someone were to answer yes in any way, you would get judged for it, or you'd have people make assumptions about you. But listen, when I say that, like, even if I say yes, there are some things that I not even miss, but that just were easier or more convenient. That doesn't mean that I don't love every single part of my life right now and every single thing about my baby. It's just when you take your life when it's just you and you change it to having you in this human that literally is counting on you to keep them alive, it's a very different world. So whether you miss life beforehand or not does not mean that you wish things were different now. It just means that there are things that were easier, simpler, more convenient back then, and things are just a little bit harder now, but you are in so much bliss, and having a child is the most amazing experience that I've ever been through. No, I would not wish to go back to life before Azariah at all. I think that when your life changes and you have a child, you can still, you're still who you were then. You're just a stronger version of yourself, and you also have this incredible human to take care of. You don't lose your identity just because you have a baby. Your identity is sealed in who Christ is. You just have another part of your life now. You just have a baby, and you get to be a mother, and you get to raise a child, and it's the most incredible experience ever. Is it possible to explain the emotional roller coaster that is childbirth? Absolutely not. It's not possible to explain. It is a phenomenon, basically, is the only way that I can explain it, and it's beautiful, chaotic, messy, scary, and euphoric all at the same time. Is the first time going to the bathroom as awful as everyone says it is? The first time both peeing and pooping after you have a baby is definitely, I wouldn't say terrifying, it's just like nerve-wracking, because you just pushed a baby out and things are definitely loose down there. So, but it is painful, especially peeing. So they give you this little thing called a peri bottle, and you squirt it down there while you're peeing, and that helps, so do that. But yeah, it's the first time you poop, maybe that's terrifying. Definitely, yeah. There's no way to like beat around the bush about that one. Okay, this might be a very TMI, but I heard that your nipples change a lot. Is that true? If you're talking about like, do your nipples change in terms of breastfeeding? Yes, they do change, because you constantly have a baby sucking on them. And I guess what my lactation consultant told me is that Americans, since we wear bras all the time, our nipples are super flat. So sometimes that's why babies have a hard time latching, because they can't feel the nipple at the roof of their mouth. So your nipples are actually supposed to be like out a little bit farther than like ours normally are. I'm not really sure, and I know everybody's boobs are different, but they change as in they just accommodate a breastfeeding baby if you choose to breastfeed. What does it mean when they check how dilated you are? How my doctors checked me is they stuck either one finger, two fingers, I'm not sure, and they like went like this to see how stretchy / dilated my cervix were. And I don't know, I guess they can tell because they're doctors, OBs, how like if you go a certain amount apart, that's how dilated you are. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. I just watched a video on it, and that's what she said. How do you tell friends and family they can't hold your baby for a while? That's a really hard one, because your friends and family are just, they really want to be supportive, and they care about you, and they care about your baby. But I think just letting them know that like you went through all of that to get your baby here, and your baby's gonna be here for their entire lifetime. So just let them know that you and your partner need that time with your baby, and hopefully they'll understand that even if it's a day or 2 or 3, however long that you need, let them know that like you're not doing it so that you're like excluding them out of the baby's life. you just need that time to bond with your baby, and they should understand that. How fast did you start breastfeeding after birth? I tried to breastfeed immediately after he was born, and they cleaned him up and everything, and they looked at him and everything was okay. He latched barely, but babies are so sleepy once they're first born because it's like a traumatic thing, that he wasn't, like, he didn't really breastfeed. He just kind of latched and that was it. But actually breastfeeding was probably like 2 days after he was born. Now keep in mind, he was in the NICU, and I couldn't be there for like 24 hours after he was born. So it might be different with you if you have your baby with you in the room the entire time after they're born. I feel like a lot of people end up with hemorrhoids but won't talk about them. You're right. People don't talk about that. They don't talk about pooping. They don't talk about peeing. They don't talk about the hard things, the gross things. I don't know if I had a hemorrhoid, but I felt at one point like I did. But generally with hemorrhoids during childbirth, they can go away if they're not pinched off. I think I had one only because I had to push so hard for so long that, like, I don't know how I didn't get one. But if I had one, it went away pretty quickly. I just kind of like hoped and prayed that it did. I didn't ever really like do anything about it. But I don't advise that. If you think you have a hemorrhoid, talk to your OB or your doctor, ask them, and then ask them what to do about it. Did you try any other positions other than pushing on your back? Yes, I tried every possible position before I pushed on my back. And the reason I ultimately ended up pushing on my back was because that my doula recommended it for first-time moms. For some reason, it's just easier. I don't know if it was necessarily easier for me, but I was just so tired, and I was trying to stand and push and lean and push and all these things, and I was just, my body was over it, so I ended up just laying down. But I was at an angle, so I still had gravity working on my side. Babies are covered in a lot of stuff at first. Did you find it gross or did you not notice? I noticed. He's really cheesy. It's called vernix. It's normal with babies, and he had a lot of it because he was born at 36 weeks, and the older babies are, the less vernix they have. But I did not care. I literally, like, they put him on my chest, and he was gooey, and he was cheesy, and he had blood all over him, like my blood, and I didn't care. Didn't care a single bit. I was just like, holy crap, this is my baby. I created this thing. Like, didn't care a bit. Can you feel them stitch you up or anything? When they stitched me up, they gave me a little shot of numbing medication. But I felt them tugging and stuff, and I could see them doing it, but I didn't feel it other than like the tugging. Okay guys, that is the end of the Q&A. This is probably super long. Thank you for sticking around and watching if you watched to the end. If you did, please give this video a like and comment down below and let me know that you watched to the end. I think it's really interesting to see the people who are like genuinely want to know all of this information. So comment down below and let me know. If you have any other postpartum questions that I didn't get to on Instagram, then comment them below and I will try to answer them for you. Remember to love God, love yourself, and love people, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!